Imagine spending 30 years building a business empire from the ground up.
Yeah, dedicating your whole life to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've sacrificed your weekends, poured your life savings into the company, and, finally built this beautiful 15 million rand legacy.
Right.
You feel totally secure. But then tragedy strikes and you unexpectedly pass away.
Which is obviously the nightmare scenario.
Right. And instead of your grieving family inheriting that smoothly operating empire, the government steps in.
Yeah, SARS comes knocking.
Exactly. They demand 2.8 million rand in estate duty, and they want it within months.
Mm-hmm.
So to pay the taxman, your family is forced into this desperate fire sale, liquidating the very business you spent your whole life building for them, and at a massive loss.
It's devastating.
It really is. And the most terrifying part, this wasn't due to poor business management. It was caused by one single static number just sitting unchecked on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it is a catastrophic scenario, and unfortunately, it happens far more often than most founders realize.
Wait, really? That common?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We spend decades focusing on accumulating wealth, generating revenue, but we spend incredibly little time engineering the actual foundation that wealth sits upon.
And that right there is our mission for today's deep dive. Welcome in, everyone. Today we are exploring the positive, incredibly empowering world of wealth protection in South Africa.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're looking at why setting up a trust is like the ultimate strategic move to build what we're calling an asset protection fortress.
I love that term.
Right, it sounds great. But we aren't stopping there. We are also exposing a hidden trap door inside that fortress that catches so many well-meaning founders completely off guard.
Yeah, the trapdoor is where it gets dangerous.
Totally. And most importantly, we are unpacking the toolkit to fix it so you can actually protect what's yours.
And just for some context, for this deep dive, we are synthesizing insights from a really comprehensive operational guide. It's titled Strategic Strategies for Reducing Trust Loan Accounts. And we're combining that with the professional methodologies of Lumka Sturman.
Right, who is a brilliant resource for this.
Exactly. She is a prominent South African trust consultant and an asset protection specialist. Her insights really ground this whole conversation.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we get into the complex mechanics of, loan accounts and tax law, we have to understand the core concept.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah. Why are trusts such a superpower for business owners? When I was reading through the source materials, the image that kept coming to mind was a really well-engineered ship.
Okay, I like where this is going. Yeah.
So a modern vessel is designed with watertight compartments, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the ship hits a reef and the hull gets breached, one compartment might flood, but those watertight doors seal shut.
Exactly, to stop the water from spreading.
Right. So the rest of the ship stays totally dry and it doesn't sink. But looking at the stats, most South African business owners are sailing without those compartments.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it, yeah. Currently, you have founders operating with valuable assets held directly in their personal names.
It's just so risky.
Incredibly risky. Or you have trading companies holding the actual commercial property they operate out of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they sign personal sureties for business debts.
Yeah.
It is this complete entanglement of personal and business liabilities.
So it's all just one big open hull.
Exactly. If the business side takes on water, say a bad debt, a severe lawsuit, or a brutal liquidation, the personal wealth side floods right along with it.
So they lose everything.
The family home, the investments, everything goes down.
So how does the fortress actually stop the flooding, like structurally?
Well, what's fascinating here is the core legal mechanism behind the fortress. It's the total separation of ownership from risk.
Okay, ownership from risk. Break that down for me.
So when you establish a trust, it operates as a completely separate legal entity. Your operating company, the one out in the market taking the aggressive swings, that carries the risk. But your trust owns the valuable assets.
So the business doesn't actually own the building it sits in.
Precisely. You, as the founder and trustee, you retain complete strategic control over how those assets are managed, but you strip away the personal exposure.
It's essentially taking the target off your own back.
Exactly.
And I want to make sure we emphasize this for you listening. This isn't some shady offshore tax evasion scheme meant only for, ultra-billionaires hiding money.
Oh, not at all. No. It is a highly regulated, thoroughly tested, and fully legally compliant structure in South Africa.
Yeah, that's a huge point.
It really is. It is actively encouraged for small and medium enterprise owners. It ensures business continuity, preserves wealth across generations, and, creates tax efficiencies.
So it's standard practice,
Yeah,
really.
it is about creating stability in an inherently unstable business environment.
I love that. It's an empowering, positive step. You are building the watertight compartments.
Exactly.
But as we teased in the intro, there is a catch.
There is always a catch.
Right. The fortress has a trapdoor. Because you can't just take, say, a 5 million rand commercial building you own personally and just hand it over to your newly formed trust for free, can you?
No, absolutely not. The South African Revenue Service, SARS, they will not allow that.
Yeah, I figured they wouldn't be too happy about that.
Right. If you simply give an asset to a trust, SARS views that as a donation.
Ah, okay.
And you will be immediately hit with a 20% donations tax.
Wow. That's a huge hit right out of the gate.
It is. So to avoid that immediate penalty, the trust has to quote-unquote buy the asset from you at fair market value.
Okay, and here's the problem. The trust is a brand new entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have 5 million rand in cash just sitting in a bank account to pay me for this building.
Exactly. Which is how the trapdoor is created.
Okay.
Because the trust cannot pay you cash, it issues you a loan. The trust formally owes you the value of that asset.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And this creates what we call the trust loan account.
And on day one, that feels like a massive win, right?
It does.
You successfully moved the asset into the fortress, you didn't trigger any immediate tax, and you hold this legal claim against the trust if you ever need to pull cash back out. It feels completely safe.
It feels safe, yes. But looking at the sources, this loan account is anything but safe.
Right.
It's not a static number on a piece of paper.
No, it's a living liability.
Exactly. And if left unmanaged, it poses two catastrophic threats to your entire structure.
Okay, let's go through those. What's the first threat?
The first threat is estate duty. When you pass away, your personal estate includes everything you own.
Right. Cars, bank accounts.
And that massive loan claim you hold against your trust.
Oh. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is considered an asset in your estate. And in South Africa, estate duty sits at 20%. And it actually jumps to 25% for estates valued over 30 million rand.
That brings us right back to that horrific scenario we opened the show with. And that wasn't a hypothetical, by the way. That was based on the Naidu family case study from our sources.
Yes, the Naidu family perfectly illustrates this exact danger.
Walk us through what happened there.
So, Mr. Naidu was a successful entrepreneur. He correctly set up a trust to hold his commercial properties.
So he did the right thing initially.
He did. But he never managed the resulting loan account. So when he passed away, his trust still owed him 15 million rand.
15 million.
Yeah. And because that 15 million rand claim was part of his personal estate, his executor was handed an estate duty bill of 2.8 million rand.
And obviously, his personal bank accounts didn't have nearly 3 million rand just sitting there in liquid cash.
They didn't. So the executor was legally obligated to demand the cash from the trust to pay SARS.
Because the trust owed the estate the money?
Exactly. But the trust was asset-rich and cash-poor. It held buildings, not liquid funds.
Oh, man. So what did they do?
The family was backed into a corner. They had to put one of their prime commercial buildings on the market immediately.
A fire sale.
Yes. When buyers know you are selling out of desperation to settle a tax bill, you do not get market value.
Right. They smell blood in the water.
Exactly. They suffered a huge fire sale, letting the building go for 800,000 rand less than it was actually worth.
That is just heartbreaking. A problem meant to be solved by the trust ended up destroying the wealth anyway.
Completely.
They lost the building, they lost all the future rental yield from that property, and they took a massive capital hit on the sale price, all because of an unmanaged loan.
And the scary part, that is only the first threat.
There's more.
Oh, yes. The second threat involves a very aggressive piece of tax legislation known as Section 7C.
Okay. I have to admit, reading the tax code made my eyes completely glaze over a bit.
I don't blame you.
Why did SARS introduce Section 7C in the first place? It seems incredibly punitive.
Well, to understand the rule, you have to look at the history. For decades, incredibly wealthy individuals would exploit this massive loophole. They would loan huge amounts of money to their trusts, completely interest-free.
Nice for them.
Right, and the trust would use that money to buy high-growth assets or businesses. So 10 years later, the business is worth, say, 100 million rand.
Wow.
And then the founder dies. But because they only ever had an interest-free claim for their original loan amount, let's say 5 million, Their estate was only taxed on the $5 million.
Wait, so the other 95 million?
The other $95 million in growth happened entirely tax-free inside the trust.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. SARS recognized they were bleeding billions in estate duty.
So they slammed the loophole shut.
They did. In 2017, Section 7C essentially dictates that if you give a trust an interest-free or low-interest loan, you are effectively giving them an ongoing hidden donation.
Okay.
So, SARS forces a choice on you. You either charge the trust, the official interest rate, which hovers around 7.75% currently, or they will deem the foregone interest as a donation, and they'll tax you on it annually.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit mind-bending. Let's say I want to follow the rules. I choose to charge my trust the 7.75% interest so I don't get hit with a donations tax penalty.
Smart move.
Right. But what if my trust just holds, like, a piece of undeveloped land?
Okay.
It doesn't generate a single cent of income. How does the trust pay me the interest?
It cannot pay you. So the unpaid interest capitalizes.
Me no.
It gets added to the principal loan amount every single year.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The source material highlights the Van der Merwe family to demonstrate how destructive this is.
Tell me about them.
Mr. Van der Merwe had an 8 million rand loan account. He charged the official interest rate to comply with Section 7C, but his trust had zero cash flow.
Right, so they couldn't pay it.
So the interest simply compounded. Over just 5 years, his 8 million rand loan ballooned to 11.2 million.
Wait, let me get this straight. He didn't make any actual cash. He didn't receive a single rand in his pocket. But his personal tax liability shot up by over 3 million?
That is the reality. That 3.2 million artificial increase adds another 640,000 rand in potential estate duty exposure.
How does anyone survive that? It's literally a ticking tax time bomb quietly expanding in the background.
It really is.
If the loan account is the trapdoor, Section 7C is the water violently pouring through it, just completely flooding the fortress.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see why passive management is so incredibly dangerous.
Absolutely.
While the physical assets inside your trust are hopefully appreciating, this loan account on the outside is compounding aggressively against you.
It's fighting you.
The longer you ignore it, the heavier the burden you leave for your grieving family to untangle.
Okay, deep breath. We clearly see the threat. But let's pivot, because the entire premise of our deep dive today is that you are not powerless here.
Not at all.
This trapdoor can absolutely be bolted shut. You can systematically dismantle this loan account, defuse the bomb, and ensure that your wealth transfers to the next generation incredibly tax efficiently.
Yes, and the guide outlines several highly effective, legally sound strategies.
Awesome.
The true mastery comes when you analyze your specific situation and actually combine these tools.
So let's start with the scenario where a trust doesn't have any cash. How do you reduce a loan when no money is changing hands?
You utilize the annual donations exemption.
How does that work?
Well, under South African law, an individual can donate up to 100,000 rand per year, or 200,000 for a married couple, completely free of donations tax.
Okay.
Instead of giving the trust actual cash, you simply forgive that specific amount of the outstanding loan debt.
Wait, so it's just a paper transaction?
It requires formal, legally binding trustee resolutions to execute properly, but essentially, yes.
That's amazing.
The Pillay family used this single strategy with incredible discipline.
What did they do?
Every year, for 12 years, Mr. and Mrs. Pillay held a brief meeting, processed the paperwork, and jointly forgave 200,000 rand of their loan.
Wow.
Over that period, they legally erased 2.4 million rand of debt. That saved their estate nearly 500,000 rand in future taxes without ever needing liquid cash to do it.
That is brilliant. It's just consistent financial hygiene.
Exactly.
But let's change the scenario. What if my trust is actually profitable?
Okay.
Say it owns an apartment complex and collects healthy rental income. As a beneficiary, I might want to take some of that profit.
Naturally.
But if the trust just pays me a cash dividend, that cash lands in my personal bank account, which inflates my personal estate again, completely defeating the purpose of the fortress.
You're exactly right. And this is where you deploy trust distribution strategically.
Okay.
Instead of the trust paying you a cash dividend, the trustees resolve to distribute the profit to you, but they immediately offset that distribution against your loan account.
So the trust essentially says, we owe you 5 million. We made 500,000 in profit this year. Instead of giving you the cash, we now only owe you $4.5 million.
That is precisely the mechanism. The Musa family applied this to their investment income.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't need the liquid cash for their lifestyle, so over 5 years, they used trust profits to offset their loan, shrinking it by $1.8 million entirely tax-free.
And it keeps their personal estate perfectly flat.
Exactly.
It's incredibly elegant. Now, reading through the sources, there was another strategy that had me scratching my head at first.
Which one?
Selling high-growth assets to the trust.
Yes.
If I own shares in a tech startup that I know are going to explode in value and I sell them to my trust at today's market value, doesn't my trust now owe me even more money? My loan account just went up.
It does increase initially, yes, but you have to look at the timeline. Let's examine Mr. Pretorius. He sold 2 million rand in high-potential shares to his trust.
Right.
Yes, his loan account increased by 2 million that day. But over the next few years, those shares tripled in value. They grew to be worth 6 million.
Ah, I see it now. Because the trust owned the shares during that growth period, that $4 million in pure profit happened safely inside the fortress.
Exactly. It's completely insulated from his personal estate duty.
That's genius.
He essentially froze the value of his personal estate at that initial 2 million mark and shifted all the explosive future growth into the protected space.
Wow.
From there, he can use the annual exemptions or distribution offsets we just discussed to slowly whittle down that frozen 2 million loan.
So what does this all mean? When you step back and look at these maneuvers, you are literally reaching into the taxman's future pocket, taking that money and placing it securely back into your family's pocket.
Yes.
And using completely legal frameworks.
It is a massive wealth preservation mechanism. And there is one final defensive layer to consider.
What's that?
Trust-owned life insurance.
Okay.
This strategy doesn't actually shrink the loan account while you are alive, but it provides instant liquidity the very moment you pass away.
Oh, that makes sense.
The Delamany family had their trust take out an 8 million rand life insurance policy, specifically on Mr. Delamany's life.
Mm-hmm.
The trust pays the monthly premiums, and the trust is the sole beneficiary.
So the worst happens, he passes away, and the trust instantly receives an 8 million rand cash injection, completely tax-free.
Yes.
And then they use that cash to immediately settle the outstanding loan with his estate.
Exactly. The estate gets the cash it needs to pay SARS, and the trust gets to keep all of its commercial properties intact.
So there is no desperate fire sale.
None. The Naidu family tragedy is completely averted.
That is the ultimate safety net. And when you combine all of these together, the results are just staggering. The sources detail the Reddy family case study, which is basically a masterclass in this.
The Reddy case study is where we really see the power of coordination.
Walk us through their numbers.
In 2015, they were staring down a combined loan account of 18 million rand.
Huge.
If they had done nothing, their family was facing a guaranteed 3.6 million rand estate duty bill.
So they attacked it from every angle.
They did.
Yeah.
They utilized the 200,000 rand annual exemption consistently.
Right.
To manage Section 7C, they charged the required interest, but they ensured the trust paid it in actual cash from rental income so the loan didn't compound.
Smart.
They aggressively applied surplus trust income to reduce the principal debt. They secured trust-owned life insurance as a backstop, and they deliberately shifted all new high-growth investments directly into the trust structure.
And the numbers really speak for themselves. Over 9 years, they ground that 18 million liability down to 10.5 million.
Incredible reduction.
That is an estimated 1.5 million saved in direct estate duty, plus all the new wealth generation was happening securely inside the fortress. It's brilliant. But hearing all the moving parts, managing Section 7C interest, drafting binding trustee resolutions, calculating capital gains on asset transfers, it highlights something pretty terrifying.
A sheer complexity of execution.
Exactly. You wouldn't try to pour the concrete foundation of a 50-story skyscraper just by watching a 10-minute YouTube tutorial.
Absolutely not.
The stakes are simply too high. I mean, if you mess up the paperwork on a trustee resolution, couldn't SARS look at your entire setup, declare it a sham trust, and invalidate the whole fortress?
Yes, they absolutely could, which is why bringing in an expert is non-negotiable.
Which brings us directly to the methodology of professionals like Limke Sturman.
Yes.
Her entire consultancy is built around acting as the architect for these specific fortresses.
She really bridges the massive gap between highly theoretical tax law and the practical day-to-day reality of running a South African business.
And what I found really refreshing looking at her approach is that she doesn't just charge this open-ended hourly rate where you have no idea what the final bill will be.
Right.
She uses a very structured framework.
It is entirely process-driven. The first phase of her work is what she calls a foundation audit.
What does that entail?
Well, before moving a single asset or drafting a single trust deed, you have to diagnose the current exposure.
That makes sense.
She comes in and analyzes exactly how entangled the founder's personal and business liabilities actually are. She assesses if the client is even structurally ready for the administrative compliance a trust requires.
Right.
It is a comprehensive risk analysis resulting in a concrete recommendation report.
So it's a rigorous diagnosis before prescribing any medicine.
Exactly.
And if the founder is ready, what does the actual building phase look like?
That moves into the asset protection blueprinting.
Okay.
This is the strategic mapping phase. You don't just throw assets into a trust. She maps out the exact flow of funds, customizes the corporate and trust structures to align with the specific industry risks, and establishes the SARS compliance checklists.
Wow, so it's highly customized.
Very. Finally, she executes the full asset protection fortress setup, which is the end-to-end restructuring.
Setting everything up legally.
Right, setting up the holding companies, protecting the intellectual property, and managing all the legal asset transfers.
And crucially, she provides an annual fortress checkup.
Yes, which is so important.
Because, as we saw with the Pillay and Vandermerwe families, consistency is everything. If you set up a beautiful trust, but forget to process your 100,000 Rand exemption resolutions every year, the loan account quietly balloons out of control again.
This raises an important question for any business owner listening. What is the true cost of inaction?
It's huge.
Doing nothing feels like the financially prudent, quote-unquote, free choice. But doing nothing is actually an active, aggressive decision to expose your family to massive risk.
Right.
When you compare Lumka's professional fees to the reality of a 2.8 million Rand estate duty bill and a forced commercial fire sale, consulting an expert isn't an expense. It is a vital, multi-million Rand cost-saving measure.
It is the ultimate investment in keeping what is rightfully yours.
Exactly.
If you are a South African business owner or an investor aggressively building your portfolio, and you are realizing right now that your current fortress has a massive trapdoor, you don't have to navigate this alone.
No, you don't.
As an educational resource, you can explore exactly how these frameworks are applied by visiting Lumka's website at www.limcasterman.com.
It's a great resource.
She also has a comprehensive book available on Amazon if you want to understand the deep mechanics of her methodology before taking action. Again, her insights are available at www.limcasterman.com.
Bringing in a specialist ensures that your financial architecture isn't just a theoretical concept, but a legally robust reality that will actually perform when your family needs it most.
So, to wrap up our deep dive today, trusts are undeniably one of the most positive, powerful tools available in South Africa for shielding your hard-earned wealth from the chaotic, unpredictable risks of business.
Yes, they are essential.
They are the watertight compartments that keep your ship afloat during a storm. But a trust is a living, breathing structure. You cannot simply set it and forget it.
Never.
You have to actively manage the loan account using exemptions, strategic distributions, and insurance to ensure the trapdoor stays firmly shut.
It demands strategic foresight, unyielding consistency, and proper professional guidance.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope this toolkit empowers you to take total control of your financial architecture today.
Me too.
But before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If you were to unexpectedly pass away tomorrow, would your family inherit a smoothly operating, impenetrable legacy, or a chaotic, highly taxed liability that forces them to tear apart the very business you spend your whole life building for them?